Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Superheroes, Movies, and Superhero Movies. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzel.
And today we're going to talk about Blade. Released in 1998, directed by Stephen Norrington, written by David S. Goyer, and starring Wesley Snipes, Stephen Dorff, Chris Christopherson, Donald Logue, Udo Kier. I'm purposefully kind of skipping over the woman that plays Karen because I actually don't know how you pronounce her name. Nabush, right? It's N''Bushe. So I don't know if I completely butchered that, but she's also in it.
Bushed it?
I nabushered it. And also starring Sanaa Lathan. I'm awful at names. But those people are in this movie, and so yeah, this was based off a Marvel property, which you could say. I was thinking at first I thought this was the first Marvel movie, if you don't count like those cheesy Captain America movies from the 70s and whatnot. But I think Howard the Duck came first.
Right. Yeah. When did Howard the Duck come out?
I think it was in the 80s. I'm pretty sure. Mm-hmm. Right. Late 80s.
Right. And then, of course, you've got, The Punisher, which we did.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. So, not the first Marvel movie by any means, but one of the first successful Marvel movies, I would say.
Yeah, this was a pretty successful one. And you were mentioning to me before we started recording how many movies this was up against, which shocked me.
Yeah. It opened on August 21st, 1998, and it opened that weekend. It was the number one movie of the weekend. And Saving Private Ryan had been open. I thought it had only been open for 2 weeks, but it had been open for 5 weeks. So it bumped Saving Private Ryan out of the number one spot. And it was up against There's Something About Mary, Snake Eyes, Ever After, Halloween H2O, Armageddon, The Negotiator. All these movies had been out for a few weeks. But still, it was the number one movie and did pretty well. It made, I believe, a little over 70 million domestically, and a little over 61 million internationally. So 131 million total. So yeah, it was a success. I don't know what the production budget was. It's not listed, unfortunately, on boxofficemojo.com. But
clearly, it was enough to make them happy because they made two more.
Right, exactly, yep. So, and out of the movies that opened that weekend, it was by far the best. I think, Blade opened that weekend with Dead Man on Campus, if you remember that one. With
Zach Morris.
Morris from Saved by the Bell.
What's his real name?
Mark Paul Gosselaar.
That's right.
It also opened it opened the same weekend as Dance With Me, which, if I recall, that's a Richard Gere movie.
That's ringing a bell.
Or am I thinking of something else?
I think you might be right.
Box Office Mojo does not tell me, so I could be wrong about that. But and then it also opened with Wrongfully Accused, if you remember that Leslie Nielsen fugitive kind of spoof, which I didn't realize it'd come out 5 years after Fugitive did. That's kind of funny. It's probably why it opened at number 12. I guess people were not really interested in seeing that one, but they were interested in seeing Blade. So, yeah, so the movie did pretty well, and obviously we got 2 sequels after it. So, if you're not familiar with Blade, he's half vampire, half human vampire hunter, essentially, played by Wesley Snipes.
Did you see it in the theater?
No, I didn't see it in the theater. I was probably too busy seeing Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah. I saw Saving Private Ryan a few times in the theater.
I didn't see Blade until... I hate to admit this, but I don't think I saw Blade until Blade 2 came out. When Blade 2 came out, and I didn't see any of them in the theater. When Blade 2 came out on DVD, I was working at Blockbuster at the time. And so I wanted to see Blade 2, and so I figured I needed to see Blade 1 first, and I'm pretty sure I rented it and checked it out. And I liked Blade 1 a lot. It'll be interesting for us to talk about Blade 2, because I don't think I've seen Blade 2 since I watched it when it came out on DVD. Mm-hmm. I think most people consider Blade 2 the best. I know out of box office money, it made the most money out of the three. It also introduced the name Guillermo del Toro to me. He directed Blade 2.
He directed?
He directed Blade 2, yes.
Oh, wow. I'm pretty excited now. I did not know that.
He directed Blade 2, and he had done a couple movies before that, but I hadn't seen them, and so after Blade 2 is, I think the success of Blade 2 is probably what opened the doors for him for Hellboy and things like that. But yeah, so anyway, I watched Blade 1, and the graphics were, even at that time, were not so great, but it was still a very enjoyable film, I thought. I really kind of liked the character of Blade, and I liked the story. And I liked Stephen Dorff as blanking on his name. I got it right here. He's Deacon Frost.
Yeah.
As Deacon Frost.
Yeah, he did. I liked him pretty well also. Chris Christopherson was very impressive to me.
Yeah. I think he was a fan favorite because, I guess before we get too far into this movie, if you haven't seen Blade, we're going to talk about the whole film, and spoilers will abound. I'm actually about to talk about one. So if you haven't seen Blade, you might want to not listen to this, go watch Blade, and then come back and join in on the discussion. So that being said, I'm about to get into spoiler territory here, so just be warned. I'm giving you the opportunity to hit stop.
They're dropping it right now. And
right, exactly.
Wait!
And spoilers, here we go. Whistler, I think, was such a fan favorite that I don't know if David Goyer didn't know that he was going to be such like a cool, or I don't know if he expected Chris Christopherson to give such a great performance or something, but obviously he killed him off in this movie. Uh-huh. But I know he's in part 2.
He's actually in part 2 and part 3.
Is he in part 3 as well?
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember. Oh, I was looking up what his IMDb was because I recognized the name so well. And I was like, I've never seen him in anything.
Chris Christopherson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I came to find out, it's kind of embarrassing, but that he was mainly known as a country singer.
That's right.
With the Highwaymen, Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson.
Right.
And I should have known that. So I apologize to society.
To the country music fans out there, I guess.
Yeah, because, I mean, Johnny Cash, he's amazing. He's a legend. And so is Willie Nelson. And I don't know Chris Christopherson's music, but I might if I heard one of his songs. But
yeah, it's probably one of those situations where you might like. I honestly can't. I don't know much of his music either, but it's probably one of those things where he wrote a song or did a song that we know that we just didn't realize was him.
Yeah. But his name is very ingrained in my head. Mm-hmm. Probably because it's so unique, Chris Christopherson.
Yeah, it's a good name.
Yeah.
Chris Christopherson. He's been acting, though, since the 70s, and I think when he started acting, he was doing Westerns, because actually, I saw a clip of a movie called Stagecoach, which was from the 80s, but it had Johnny Cash in it, and Chris Christopherson, which I thought was kind of interesting. I don't know if it was a TV movie or if it was an actual theatrical movie, but I saw it, and I was like, that's Johnny Cash. And then Chris Christopherson's in it, so that actually kind of makes sense that he was in the Highwaymen part of that group, and then he just started doing movies with Johnny Cash too.
Was that movie good?
Well, I don't know. I didn't really watch much of it. I just saw clips of it.
Okay.
Here's an interesting tidbit about Whistler, and I don't know how true this is, but it's on IMDb's trivia, so you got to kind of take that with a grain of salt, because it's all IMDb is just like Wikipedia, where people can just kind of throw stuff on there, and there's really no fact checking, I guess, or especially on IMDb. But according to IMDb trivia, Chris Christopherson's character Whistler was created for Blade's cameo on the Spider-Man cartoon show in '94. He was liked so much by Marvel CEOs that he was adopted into the Marvel universe.
Interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask if you probably haven't read any of the Blade comics. I haven't.
I haven't either.
The way I know Blade is from the Spider-Man cartoon.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess I never saw those episodes because I don't remember him being on the Spider-Man show at all.
Do you remember Morbius?
Yeah.
He's in
that makes sense.
He's in those episodes. Yeah.
Right. That would make sense. So the idea behind Blade is that his mother, that's how the movie opens up. His mother was bitten by a vampire, and then he was born. So I guess his mom was pregnant when she got bit by the vampire, and he became half vampire in the womb, I suppose. So the biggest difference is, I think Deacon Frost says at one point, you've got all of our strengths but none of our weaknesses. They call him the Daywalker because one of the biggest things is he can walk around during the day and doesn't burn up like a normal vampire would.
That's a good nickname. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Trying to think of what other weaknesses he doesn't have of theirs. He obviously does have the thirst for blood, which is a problem when you don't want to kill people.
He does, but he suppresses it with the serum.
Right. Which is a serum that Whistler makes.
No, because he goes and buys it from a store.
He gets it from a guy, supplier.
Yeah. He steals watches and buys them with watches.
That's right. I apologize. I watched this movie a couple weeks ago, and I'm trying to remember how it goes.
Let me go ahead and say this. I watched Blade for the first time a few weeks ago.
Oh, wow. What was your opinion of it right off the bat?
I was kind of enjoying it pretty well from the beginning, and it slowly tempered off towards the end.
Yeah.
Then I watched it again tonight, just kind of refresh.
Yeah.
And I liked it better, but it kind of did the same thing. Not as bad as much tampering, but it started off well, and then closer to the end, it just kind of started to unravel a little bit.
Yeah, I can get that. With the whole kind of climax of the movie, with the whole, it's like that, I don't know what you would call it, like a temple type thing with all the blood and...
Right. I mean, that could be done fine. It was just the way it was executed.
Yeah.
Having the doctor guy that was killed, bit in the beginning of the movie down there in the cellar was kind of cheesy. It's just, it's hard to explain, but there's just certain elements that you just kind of get a little bit of a bad feeling in your stomach.
Yeah, I remember watching it a couple weeks ago and thinking that it felt like it was dragging on a little bit towards the end. Mm-hmm. So I feel like the last act of the movie could have been tightened up a bit, perhaps. Stephen Norrington, the director of this film, went on to direct The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
I've not seen that.
That's
a comic
really
too, isn't it?
Seeing it is a comic. It was written by Alan Moore, and I forget who illustrated
that's right.
it. So the writer of Watchmen. Very interesting premise. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It's basically a lot of literary figures team up and become. The movie, anyways. A lot of literary figures team up and basically become kind of like a crime-fighting team. I don't know I think the comic is a little different than that. It's not as action-packed, perhaps, as the movie was trying to be. Mm-hmm. But it is a lot of the same characters. The movie has Tom Sawyer, Alan Quartermain, who's Sean Connery, the Invisible Man, Dr. Jekyll, and Mr. Hyde. I can't remember her name, but she's from Dracula. She's the woman that gets turned into a vampire in Dracula. And then it's Captain Nemo from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So it's like a really cool premise, all these kind of characters from all these different novels coming together. But the movie was horrible and got horrible reviews. And apparently Stephen Norrington had such a bad time making that film that he said he was never going to make another movie. And so far, he has not made another movie.
Do you think that is actually his decision?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's funny. It could be partially not his decision because it was such a bad movie. But usually, even when somebody makes a really bad movie, they usually get a chance to make another one. He has not made anything since. He has done special effects, apparently, I guess. Well, no, it looks like he has a credit for something in 2015 as under special effects. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. But the last movie he directed was League of Extraordinary Gentlemen in 2003. So he's only directed 4 movies, and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was the last one.
Speaking of directors that did bad movies, did you ever see Super Mario Brothers?
I did.
That was directed.
It's been a while.
Yeah, that was directed by Annabelle Jankel and and Rocky Morton.
Two directors, all right.
And let's see here. Oh, never mind. I could have sworn that both of these directors never did anything again. Let's see Rocky here. Rocky, yeah, he's done stuff too. Very, very. He did one short, a video documentary on George Harrison, and then a very best of Elvis Costello. So, and that was 2004 and 2005. So he's been out of the business for a while, and she did stuff like that as well. Elvis Costello, Live from Abbey Road, which of course would be the Beatles, a TV movie, and then some music. Yeah, so it sounds like they were kind of kicked out of the business.
Right, they have not made a feature
right
studio movie since Super Mario Brothers.
Now, I actually enjoyed Super Mario Brothers. Mainly as a kid, and for a nostalgic purpose, I've gone back and watched it, and I still enjoy it, but it's but it's a bad movie.
Right.
I think we should do that movie sometime.
We should, because I don't, like I said, I saw it when I was a kid, but I honestly don't know. I remember pieces of it, but I don't remember all of it. So it'd be interesting to watch again.
Oh, you're gonna hate it.
Probably.
You're gonna hate it.
But that's okay.
So what was your favorite part of this movie?
Like favorite scene?
Sure.
My favorite scene is the scene, even though it's kind of a love-hate thing, because I really like the scene with Deacon and Blade outside, where he's got Deacon Frost has that little girl kind of hostage. And they're having in that conversation that they have. The reason I don't like that scene is because I feel like it's really cheesy that vampires can just put on sunscreen and then go out.
Your
outside.
mascara is running.
Right. So but I like how that scene plays out, and then I like how this came out a year before The Matrix, and we got a little bit of bullet time in this movie, where Blade fires a couple of I guess they're silver bullets, and it kind of goes into like bullet time slow motion, and you see Deacon Frost avoid them. So I really like the end of that scene, and I just like their I guess you could call it their chemistry in that scene, which is funny because I read somewhere that was Stephen Dorff's first day on set, and he hadn't really quite gotten the hang of the character yet, and apparently like people were visiting the set. Like I read somewhere that like David Fincher stopped by that day, which I guess David Fincher was like probably in the process of making Fight Club around that time.
Yeah.
And so he kind of was like nervous, and then there was like some tension between him and Wesley Snipes. So I'm amazed that the scene ended up actually coming out as good as it did, if all that's true, because he did a good job, I thought.
Did it go into any detail
about the tension?
Yeah.
It was, it had something to do with, him, like I said, not having a total grasp on the character yet. And so he kept either, I don't know if he was messing up or if he was just not playing it the way that everybody wanted or something, but Wesley Snipes said that he had to eventually step in as like a producer and
Yeah, I was going to say Wesley Snipes produced the movie. He was one of the producers.
And I don't know if when he said he stepped in as a producer, if that means that he had to tell Stephen Dorff to do it a certain way, or what. I don't know what that means exactly, but they talk about it a little bit in the commentary. I didn't get that far really into when I watched it, like I said, a couple weeks ago, and then I immediately started rewatching it with the commentary. But I didn't get that far. I'm remembering this from IMDb trivia again. So I'll see if I can try to find it.
While you're doing that, you mentioned the bullet time, and that's something I wanted to. That was one of the major points I wanted to bring up. Was how this came out the year before The Matrix, and it feels a lot like The Matrix took so much inspiration from this movie. Just the way it's shot, the colors of the film, the darkness. You've got the techno-esque music with the martial arts fighting.
Right.
You've got the trench coats, the black trench coats. It just felt like The Matrix almost.
Yeah.
And I found it interesting that this movie actually came out first.
Yeah. It came out a year before, so when movies come out that close together,
Right, they had already started.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's a happy coincidence, but I don't know. I know The Matrix had a lot of influence from like anime and things like that, and so
right, but I wouldn't say the way it was shot. The anime aspect was more of I think the story.
Sure.
And the martial arts and stuff.
Right, of course.
But just it was very interesting that the trench coats, even the scene where he goes in and at the end, Blade, and you have all those police officers in the building, and he just goes and Blade just goes up and just starts blazing them all down with his gun. That was very Matrix feeling.
I have a note about that opening scene. My note was the victim, the guy that we basically we follow into the club, and there's two notes I wrote about that scene. The first one was, if something dripped on my hand that looked like blood, I don't think I would taste it.
Right.
And then the second note I wrote was, that guy is totally going to jail for Quinn being burned. Because he's the only person around. Right. And granted, and he's like covered in blood and there's no bodies. So it's just like, the cops would be like, what is going on? There's only two people. One guy's burned to death and the other guy's covered in blood. We're going to take this guy to jail, I guess, because he's alive.
Yeah, exactly.
So I thought that was kind of funny. Blade was just like, see ya, you're on your own, pal.
I didn't like Quinn.
No, I'm a fan of Donald Logue. I think he's a good actor, but in this film, yeah, he's a little
annoying, because that's the word I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that's probably what I would say. Yeah, and I don't necessarily know if that's Donald Logue's acting or if it's the writing, but yeah, he was a bit annoying. He was a character that needed to die probably a little earlier on in the film than he does.
Yeah, I agree.
I do think it's funny though that he keeps getting like limbs chopped off, and he's like, I just grew this arm back or whatever, and then gets him chopped off again. But
yeah.
So that obviously that was my roundabout way of saying that was my favorite scene. So what about you? What was your favorite moment?
Well, we just got done talking about the opening scene. That is the one scene I had. This is the one scene I had seen before watching it. It seems like it probably was you way back in the day showing me the beginning of the movie, and we must have not gotten through it. But I remembered that scene, the club and all that, and the bloodbath.
Yeah, it's a good opening.
It is, and that one doesn't feel so cheesy. The fight scene in that,
right?
So that one might be my favorite. Probably is, because I can't really think of anything else that would outdo that. I'll go with that one.
Okay. I found the bit of trivia with according to Wesley Snipes and Stephen Dorff on the commentary track. I'm reading this off IMDb. There was a slight clash between Snipes and Dorff while filming the hostage scene where Blade and Frost first meet in person. Excuse me. It was Dorff's first day, and while he was trying to establish Frost's motivation, approach, etc., Snipes became impatient and tried to counsel Dorff. Dorff became incredibly frustrated and said he felt overwhelmed since David Fincher and other notable filmmakers visited during filming and added further tension to the frantic on-set nature, forcing Snipes to assert his producer authority and make decisions. Snipes would tell Dorff that it was essential to trust in him, not only as the starring lead, but also as a producer. And Snipe goes on in the commentary to say, for a while, there wasn't that trust. So I guess maybe they were doing multiple takes, and Wesley Snipes was starting to get a little impatient, and I guess started to kind of tell him, play it this way, and Dorff didn't like that, I guess. I don't know, something like that. But
Gotcha.
it's funny because, Stephen Dorff I actually really, really like in this movie. He doesn't... Stephen Dorff, from the commentary, he was saying that he, up until this movie, he wasn't interested in doing, like, superhero films, which... This is like a borderline superhero movie, I guess you could say. Or he wasn't interested in doing comic book movies, I guess is what he said. He was more interested in doing like smaller kind of independent films and dramas and things like that. And so why he accepted this role, I can't remember. But he really, to me, seems like he's really having a good time in the role. Like he seems like this was the role that he was like born to play almost, Yeah.
I agree with that.
And so, and I think, it's obviously, I think it's fair to say it's probably his biggest role to date. I can't think of, I've seen a few Stephen Dorff movies, here and there. He pops up in movies. But I don't think I think he got some attention off of this movie that he hasn't gotten since or before.
One of my complaints about his character, and it's not his fault, it's just, it doesn't really make sense the way it was written, was how arrogant and confident he is going up against all these ancient vampires.
Mm-hmm.
And how he, especially, what's the guy's name that the head vampire guy that he ends up taking to the beach?
The actor's name is Udo Kier, and it looks like his character's name is Dragonetti.
Okay. Which I recognized him from Ace Ventura, Pet Detective.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But yeah, he just kind of gets up in his face, and it's like they make jokes and comments about how Frost is not even a pure blood. Mm-hmm. He was bitten and turned.
That really rubs Deacon Frost the wrong way.
Oh yeah, it does. But you'd think he would have been a little more clever and cunning and sneaky about going about the way that he did things. But he's kind of like right up in their face, and I don't understand why these ancient vampires, whatever. What was the guy's name again?
Dragonetti.
Why he would let him kind of push him around like that?
I don't know. That's a good question as to why he would let him do it. I don't know. You'd think they would have, punished him or something for not being respectful, perhaps. But instead, he lets him take him out to the...
You talking about the beach?
Yeah, is it the beach?
Well, he doesn't let him. I mean, he's got a hood over his head.
Right.
They kidnap him. But
But that's what I'm saying. He didn't punish him, and then they kidnap him, and then he dies. So
he dies, and then Frost shows back up at the committee, sits down in the head chair around 12. I need 12 volunteers. That was a cool line. But and they just let him take over. It's like, okay, it just did not make any sense. Another thing is with the plan and about to bring back this blood god, and he's been decoding these ancient scriptures of the vampires,
right,
to figure out, I guess, how to bring this blood god back, and the ritual needed to do so. And he needs the blood of... Was it blood that he needed from all of them? Because blood drips on their head.
Right.
I don't remember if he took their blood. I don't think he did. Maybe the blood dripping on them created some kind of reaction inside of them. But the skeleton winged things come out, which I didn't like that part either.
No, I didn't like that part either. That looked really bad, and the fact that they come out of the people's mouths and stuff, just right. They had a hard time animating that. That's what they did, right? They came out of the mouth.
They came out of the mouth. It was very weird looking, but also, did they not need Dragonetti to be a part of that?
I think they needed 13. So there were 13 council members, But I'm looking at this right now. And it says Blade and the 12 members of the Vampire Council are to be used as offerings for Frost's La Magra ritual. Mm-hmm. And so Blade is put into a large torture device where most of his blood is extracted for the ritual. The 12 members of the council are executed and their souls are absorbed by Frost, turning him into La Magra. So I don't know if they hadn't killed Dragonetti, would Dragonetti be the one that they were extracting the blood from? You'd think Blade's blood would be a lot different than Dragonetti's because he's half human, half vampire.
Right.
So you'd think that Blade would be really the only one that they could use the blood of. So I don't know if Dragonetti was unnecessary or if... Yeah, I don't know. You only need 12 sacrifices, and there were 13 council members, so he's like, well, let's kill one of them. Let's kill Dragonetti because I don't like that guy.
The fight scene at the end I liked, for the most part, with Frost and Blade.
Yeah.
And the swords. That was pretty cool.
I like it up until the end, when he basically...
Oh, yes.
Like,
the serum...
Yeah. He gets, like, injected with, like, 7 of those vials, whatever, and explodes.
The worst part is when Blade kicks the last one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not very good either. But
I would say that's awful myself.
Yeah. The special effects really just don't hold up very much. That's my big thing. Like, when you see the souls of the vampires coming out and they're like those winged skeleton things, that doesn't look very good. And then when Frost explodes, that doesn't look very good either. Mm-hmm. It's just whatever special effects company they were using. And granted, it was 98, so special effects, are obviously not as good then as they are now. But it just left a bit to be desired.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's funny that we haven't mentioned Karen at all, who's the human character that I guess we're kind of learning about who Blade is and these vampires almost kind of through her perspective.
Right.
As she learns it, we learn it type of thing. But she really, in my opinion, doesn't bring much to the story. Other than being this person who kind of is along for the ride. And she does come up with the serum that explodes vampires.
Right, and that's the serum that they used at the end, right?
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I guess Frost thought that the serum was the serum that Blade had been using to keep himself under control, but it wasn't.
Correct. It was the... Because
I just thought about that. That's interesting because Blade mentions to him, he's like, you should try it. You might like it. He was actually trying to get Frost to
do it.
To get himself to explode.
Yeah.
Right there. That would have been interesting.
Because Whistler and Karen basically start to try to help, or try to start to come up with a cure for Blade. I think Whistler's been working on it for a long time, and they've never really come up with anything. And she starts to try to help and ends up making the serum that explodes vampires. Mm-hmm. Like, becomes like an explosive when it comes into contact with vampire blood.
That scene was interesting, how she's like, hey, check this out. Watch what happens when you mix it with vampire blood. And she puts it under a microscope.
Yeah.
And she's like, stand back, though. and then he looks in, and it explodes. Why didn't she just put it on a table? Why put it under a microscope if you're not supposed to actually look at it?
I think, doesn't he give her a look in that scene? Like, after it explodes, he, like, looks at her?
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me?
Right.
That is very true. Why? It's like, hey, check this out. It's probably going to blow up in your face, so...
I'm going to put it under a microscope, but don't look in it.
Whistler is an interesting character because he's like... he's not anything like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but that's what I was going to say. He's like he's like a vampire slayer before he comes into contact with Blade. So he's been killing vampires presumably for his whole life, and then runs into Blade and has somebody that is even better at it than he is. And so
that's a good question. How did he run into Blade, and why did he not kill him?
I don't know.
And how long has he known Blade? But yeah, I really like Whistler. He's a cool character. To me, he kind of reminds me of Kurt Russell a little bit.
Yeah.
In his demeanor and everything. I'm like, just when I looked at him, I'm like, Solid Snake. Not Solid Snake. That's Metal Gear Solid. Snake Plissken.
Snake Plissken. It says Whistler found Blade living on the streets. So it could have been when he was a child. But yeah, he's kind of He's kind of like a motor. Like I see like him riding a motorcycle, being kind of in a
Right.
you know. He's just kind of a tough guy, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know how to describe him, but he's a really cool character, and he does, you know.
He makes walls
like
explode, and he's behind them.
Right. He's just a cool, old, tough guy.
He is. He did a good job.
I was actually really bummed the first time I saw the movie that he died.
Right. So I'm curious how they're going to bring him back for the second movie.
Sure. Well, it's like I said, it's been a long time since I saw it, but I did notice, because I knew that they brought him back, I was watching this time, or when I watched a couple weeks ago, I was paying attention to see what they showed and what they don't show. And you never actually, you hear the gun go off,
Right.
but obviously they don't show him killing himself. So,
But you see his arm fall. You're definitely led to believe.
Yes, of course. And I think the filmmakers definitely intended it to be
Exactly.
that he was killing himself. However, I think the second movie uses that to its advantage.
Uh-huh.
And I think there's like a flashback scene, if I remember correctly, of them showing you like what really happened right then or something, you know, type of thing.
He shoots it up in the sky, and then his arm falling is him being relieved that he did not shoot himself.
Right, exactly.
Oh, thank God I didn't do it.
That was close. So, yeah, I don't remember exactly, but we'll have to watch Blade 2 and find out.
Mm-hmm.
But I forgot that he was even in the third one. So,
And
pretty cool.
you've seen the third one?
I have
Clearly.
seen the third one.
Okay.
I remember more about the third one than I do the second one. The third one has Ryan Reynolds in it, and I believe it has to do with Dracula. I'm like pretty sure Dracula is in the third one.
Ryan Reynolds is in another superhero movie?
Yeah, another comic book movie.
Yeah.
He's in. It's him and basically it's like Blade has two helpers in this movie, and it's Ryan Reynolds and Jessica Biel in Blade Trinity.
Is that why it's called Blade Trinity?
I don't remember.
Because there's three of them?
I guess I don't recall.
One of the other things I thought was kind of unique and weird was Pearl, which was the huge guy, hacker vampire.
With a weird voice.
Yes, the weird, high-pitched, whiny voice.
Yeah. I'm assuming that character is straight out of the comics.
Actually, it's not. I
Really?
looked it up. I looked him up because I was very curious what he would have looked like as a comic character.
Yeah.
And from what I gathered, his first appearance and last appearance was in Blade the movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
That surprises me because his character design in the movie and everything is just so bizarre that I
Right.
assumed it had to have been a comic book character.
Exactly, like something
That
like Hector Hammond.
Yeah, yeah.
But no, from what I saw, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone out there, but I think he was made for the movie.
That is very surprising. I would not have guessed that at all. That was a very strange scene, and it was very... He's obviously a vampire.
Right, because of the ultraviolet.
Right. It burns him. So my question, I guess, about Pearl is... Because when you think of vampires, you think about how like they don't age, which I guess they do in the Blade universe. They just age very slowly.
Yeah, because Dragonetti mentions that he was born a vampire.
Yeah.
So he had to have grown up.
Right. And I think I remember somewhere in the movie they talk about how the aging process slows down when you become a vampire.
Uh-huh.
So you're not immortal necessarily. I'm assuming you could eventually grow old and die. However, your aging is slowed down a lot. So since these vampires age, can they also get fat? That's what my question is. Was Pearl that fat before he became a vampire?
Right.
Or is he just getting fat off human blood? Is that like
He only
way too
feeds
much
on
human
people
blood?
that eat McDonald's.
Right. So, or was he fat and then got bit and became a vampire?
Right.
That's my question. And I mean, that dude is huge.
Yeah, he's abnormal. No human. He
Right.
had to have gained that weight being a vampire because no human could sustain that weight.
And then the question is, who brings him? Because he's not like very mobile. You know,
No.
because he's so big. So who's bringing him, like, the blood for him to consume?
Right, and why?
He's got to have, like, a helper.
Why do they need him? Except to decode these... I don't know. He has some purpose that he's had to have had before deciphering the writing.
One day we might find codes that need deciphering, and Pearl is the only person that can do it. So we better keep him around.
Dragon Eddie's like, he catches Frost down there in the archives. First of all, he yells at him for being there. That's another one of those examples of the scene where he's like, "I've told you, it's only for the
Council members."
Right. And then Frost tells him to shush. That gets up in his face. He's like, "No need to yell. You're in a library." And he mentions, don't bother trying to decode these. We've been trying, and no one's ever been able to do it.
Right. He does it, like, the next day.
Right. With the help of Pearl.
Right.
So
right,
what's Pearl's role, past role? Like,
I don't know.
something. But, yeah.
Pearl is a mystery.
Pearl's a mystery. I didn't like Pearl when it comes down to it.
Yeah. I'm not a huge Pearl fan either, I guess. I feel like it's a necessary scene, but at the same time, was it necessary for him to be morbidly obese and have that weird voice and everything? Like,
right. To me, it was just a shock scene to where they wanted you to take something from it where you're like, oh, remember that weird scene where they had that huge guy that we had never seen anything like that? It was really the purpose, I think, of that scene.
Sure.
Besides, and they threw in this is how the scripts got decoded.
Right. I agree with that.
And maybe they made him like that because he's a hacker and he just sits on a computer.
And a computer all day. That's another good thought. I will say this about Blade, especially back in the late 90s. Like, I don't know if I could see anybody else except Wesley Snipes playing Blade. And they actually did, after the third movie came out, I think they had a Blade TV show. And it was not Wesley Snipes. It was another guy. And it did not do very well, and I believe it was canceled very quickly. And I don't know if it was because of the fact that it wasn't Wesley Snipes playing Blade, and people just were not interested, or if it was the actual quality of the show or whatever. But I remember when I saw whoever this guy was playing Blade, I was like, nah, I don't think so. Like, it just didn't, it's like, it's got to be Wesley Snipes or it's not,
Yeah.
I mean, eventually I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Blade reboot, because they reboot everything.
Right.
And I'll be curious to see who they get to play Blade. But back then in the 90s, late 90s, he was the perfect person to play Blade.
Yeah, I liked him. He looked really good. I liked his hairstyle.
Right.
Just kind of gives him that differentiated appearance. The shades, which, that's another Matrixy thing.
Right, it's kind of the long black trench coat and the glasses, sunglasses, and everything. Yeah,
right. It was interesting. I kind of wish I had seen this back then.
Yeah, probably would have appreciated it more.
Right.
I agree.
But at the same time, it's interesting to have seen it for the first time in today's age. Mm-hmm. So I get to take that with me.
It's interesting that you're watching it too after. Well, I guess I did too. After The Matrix, because like you said, there's a lot of things in it that are kind of similar to The Matrix, and obviously there was so many movies that basically ripped off The Matrix or tried to be like The Matrix that watching it after The Matrix, you could almost dismiss it because you're like, oh, this is just a Matrix ripoff. But you have to really kind of remind yourself that it came out a year before The Matrix, actually.
Exactly. And it makes me wonder, too, did you ever see Mortal Kombat?
I've seen the original.
Yeah, that's the only one I've seen, too. But you have the martial arts fighting with the techno-esque music.
Right.
And that was really the first time I had ever seen that done. And I'm wondering if Blade kind of took some inspiration from that. And I'm wondering if Mortal Kombat was really the inspiration for Blade and The Matrix as far as doing the stylized music with the martial arts.
Right. It's possible. I have a feeling a lot of those martial arts movies are probably more inspired by foreign films. I feel like there's a lot more, especially back then, there was more martial art films going on either from the kind of Chinese market or whatever, or potentially even like I'm thinking of like Jackie Chan and stuff back then,
Right.
and even other movies. But so I wonder. I don't know. It'd be interesting to go back and look at like movies from the '90s from an international market and see if they had the techno music as well. If it's something that we kind of adopted from them, or if it was like Mortal Kombat was the first to kind of do something like that, and the filmmakers of Blade and things like that were like, oh, that's pretty cool, and took it. Or if it has more of a international influence.
Yeah, I agree. Because I was going to ask you if you had seen anything. You've seen a lot more movies than I have that kind of reminded you of that style. Because Mortal Kombat came out, I believe, in '95.
That sounds right.
And that's 3 years before Blade.
I can't think of anything.
And that was kind of the first supernatural martial arts movie that I can think of.
Right.
Besides Street Fighter. Which I can't remember. I think that one came out first.
94? Did that come out before Mortal Kombat?
I think it did. It had Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah, Raul Julia.
And it was awful.
I never saw it.
It was bad.
Never saw it.
I enjoyed Mortal Kombat. And I've gone back.
I didn't, but I saw it. I didn't see it in the 90s. The first time I saw it, I think I was 20 years old or something.
Uh-huh.
So it was
well,
like
I've gone. I went back and bought it when I was 21 and watched it. Very excited to see it because I hadn't seen it for so long, and it wasn't as good as I remembered. But it's still a fun-esque movie. And back when it came out, because I saw it in the theater, it was pretty hardcore. And the music, the theme music for that movie, just really got
that
your
is
blood
pretty
pumping.
awesome. Yeah, that's probably the best thing to come out of the movie, honestly.
Oh yeah, I agree.
So, what would you rate Blade?
I'm going to be generous and give it 3 out of 5 stars.
3 out of 5 stars.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm being a little generous too. I'm just going to give it a B. I feel like it's a solid B movie. I think it gets some points off for those bad special effects.
right.
Even though, like I said, it was '98, and they obviously didn't have as good of special effects as they do now. But yeah, I enjoy the. I mean, a B is not a bad rating. I enjoy the movie and everything, but it's not. It's not going to be my top 10 favorite movies of all time or anything.
Yeah, and it falls on the lower end of my superhero films.
Yeah,
definitely.
Same here. Well, we'd love to know what you think about Blade. You can leave us a comment on Facebook, facebook.com/SM and SM Podcast. You can throw us a line on Twitter @CinemaHeroes, or you can check out our website, www.cinemaheroes.com, where you can find all of our previous episodes as well. That being said, I think this about wraps it up for this episode. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzel.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for downloading.